So what we did was divide up into different subject areas to focus on problem areas of the economy. What could we do to stimulate the economy? So I focused on the infrastructure, for instance, kind of building bridges and the country's infrastructure and the energy area and some of the technology areas. But they had lots of them for creating jobs, taxes, finance. And so we had subgroups who had people who had special areas of expertise. We drilled down on that and do some analysis, have a lot of outside speakers come and give us ideas, consultants, CEOs, and then we'd produce a recommendation for the president in each of these areas and debate with him and present the rationale behind it. Well, we had a lot of them, but one of the ones I worked on was the formation of an infrastructure bank, which we think is actually about to happen, where we'd have a bank which is common in other parts of the world. Europe has a very successful one for 50 years, and it raises money and it builds things like bridges and toll booths and things like that, and you can charge for it. It turns into a business, and you get your money back, and the bank funds the next thing, highways, and it's the accepted way of building infrastructure in Europe because the bank is very solid. These are things that people have to have, and they have to ride over bridges and trains, you name it, and it creates a lot of jobs. Well, it's obviously an impediment to commerce if the infrastructure starts to crumble. I mean, that's one of the problems that some other areas of the world have had for many years. And one of the problems, for instance, in India is the infrastructure isn't what it needs to be. Our infrastructure is starting to age, whether it's airports, whether it's roads, you name it. We all know that, and we've seen bridges crumbling and dikes collapsing. These things don't last forever. And all of that was built on the model that we're talking about, where we had a federal government program that built a lot of that infrastructure, and then that kind of went away, and a lot of that went to the state level, and they just don't have the money. So the infrastructure is aging. It's only a matter of time before we're going to be forced to do something. Why not do it now, while we can create some jobs? We would meet with the president probably every 2 to 3 months. We'd do work in between and get the proposals together, and then the meetings would be, I don't know, probably a couple of hours, just presenting findings. And then in between, if he had requests on specific subgroups, he could interact with that. But mostly it was every few months and presenting a discussion of what we'd been working on, any new proposals or updates from there. It was all about jobs, right? So that's the whole reason for the commission. That's everything came back down to that. How can we eliminate things that are hurting jobs and create more things to generate jobs? And so some of it was, on the other side of it, let's take away some impediments. So that's why we had a separate tax task force, and they gave me some recommendations as well. So, but it's all about how can we do things to encourage people to hire. And there are some that I agreed with, some that I didn't. I just didn't think giving employers a certain amount of money to hire someone made anybody hire, because you're still not going to hire someone you don't need, even if they're cheaper. You're still, if you don't need them, you give them a credit to hire, it doesn't do a lot. So we had debates like that. But you had a wide cross section of people on the commission. There were other people who felt differently because we all had different backgrounds. Well, I've always believed in public service. That's where my career started, in the military. So, and my family has. So I've always been involved in public service of some kind and involved in politics from a very young age. So I just think it's a great thing to do and interesting and a way to help. And if you can have some small impact in it, it's certainly gratifying.